And now, live from Level 5 Productions on the island of Milleronia, it's The Larry Miller Show. Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. America, and everyone who's always wanted to charge a German machine gun nest. Hi, folks, and welcome back to the Larry Miller Show. I'm Larry Miller, but in a way, aren't we all? And boy, oh boy, it's a great day anyway, but it's nice. We're on Milleronia, of course, where I love it, and so does Colonel Jeff, and it's a beautiful day here, which I demand by law, but it is a gorgeous day, and I was here also, so the seventh game of the World Series here, and Ozzy Compton Miller II, our doggy, and the other doggy is somewhere around, but Ozzy is here in our studio, because as I told him, and he knows that he's my executive assistant. So he's next to the big desk here, and with all the devices on it, and he's, on the floor with his head down, and to you, it might look like he's napping, but he's got a lot of duties. I mean, he's a pretty official guy. So anyway, it's wonderful to be here. Oh, there's so much to tell you about. And as always, the music makes me And as always, our music makes me so happy, and it feels wonderful to start to do another show for you. And of course, that's the Sergeant Henry Gunther Orchestra and the Ann Crum Dancers, featuring boy tenor Don Riley asking the musical question, if we are all Larry Miller, why do we need an LMDS card? Well, Don, let me tell you, first of all, if we're all Americans, why do we need to wave our flag at a July 4th parade? Actually, that doesn't quite make sense, does it? But it's a great thing. You know what? Just do it. It's the right thing to do. And I always do it. In fact, when our older boy came home from his first deployment in the Marines, you know what? We wanted it to be, we wanted to wave our flags. And I know it may sound a little corny to some of you, but it wasn't. It was very meaningful to us and all the other families and parents and wives and children who were there to see their loved ones. And so you know what? And by the way, for whatever it's worth, we brought a couple of flags of our own that we have here. Not gigantic ones on poles, but we had a couple that are about a foot long and about 8 or 9 inches wide. And the Marines put out a table there just inside the hangar with flags on it, with the little flags you see in movies. And they had them just in a row stacked up. And you know what? We thought that was really nice of them. And so we got one of those too. And at any rate, though, so why do we need anything? Okay, well, there are plenty of reasons. It's a good question, Don. Why, if we're all Larry Miller, why do you need an LMDS card? That's the Larry Miller Drinking Society card. The number one reason is, yes, well, if you're all Larry Miller, that's why you need one. Because I'm Larry Miller and I need one. I need one myself. And plus, they're free. And that's a pretty good reason to get anything. I think that's the cherry on top. You know what? And go to our website and see how you do it. Because we just have them for free. You can print it out right after the show. Not now, not during the show. Listen to the show. And then after that, print yourself a Larry Miller Drinking Society card and be one of the cool people. Is that cool? I don't know. Well, I think it is. And by the way, it's worth mentioning that's an obituary for Ann Crum. Ann was a fine actress, on Broadway and all over the place. And she lived from 1950 to 2019, just a few days ago. She starred in aspects of Love and was an original member of the cast of Les Miserables and the lead in the stage adaptation of Anna Karenina and so many others. And that's well worth a smile and a tip of the hat and a good wish for her. And by Amazon. That's right, Amazon. They are a terrific company. You can get anything in the world you want, anything you can imagine. You can get from them, except, of course, an actual Amazon. That's something I always like to point out. You can't expect the doorbell's going to ring one day and there's going to be a beautiful woman about 6'2" and full of muscles and wearing a great, Amazon outfit. Those are pretty good outfits, by the way. You have to admit that. Call Amazon for anything you want. And by the way, you can just go there. There are 1,000 ways to get there on your computer, on your iPhone, anything at all. But it's still the best. Yeah, go to our website. That's LarryMillerPodcast.com. Who's on the mountain? Tom Mix. Oh, pardon me. I should have had the fish. At any rate, you know what? Do that, and you can get anywhere. We have a banner that says Amazon. Click that and go lie down in your lazy boy chair and put a magazine over your face and take a nap. Colonel Jeff and I will get you to Amazon. We don't care if it's the middle of the night and the little red light flashes on our phone from 1961. We don't care. We'll get you there. And that brings me to my favorite part of the show, the joke of the week. This is a pretty good one. As you know, I love telling a joke every week, and if you like it, we want you to pass it along. Tell a friend at work or someone in your family. And Colonel Jeff and I both liked this one, and we hope you do too. There's a fella in the hospital, and he's very, very sick. And he's in the bed there, and he's all tied up with all the wires and all the tubes and everything. And one day in the middle of the afternoon, his doctor comes in, and he's got, one of those doctor smiles on, the smiles that never quite reach the eyes. And he says to the fellow that, I've got some good news and some bad news. And the guy's face falls, and the doctor just says, I'll give you the bad news first. Your cancer is back again, and it's stronger than ever. In fact, it's 10 times stronger than ever. And we can't stop it in any way. And there's going to be tremendous pain. And, this is it for you. You're not going to survive this. And the guy says, good Lord. Okay, what's the good news? And the doctor says, see my new receptionist? I'm sleeping with her. We got a kick out of that, and I hope you did too. That's in the school of silliness for comedy. At any rate, and that brings me to my second favorite part of the show, the Poetry Corner. This is a lovely poem, and a meaningful one, by the great Walt Whitman. And it's called Dirge for Two Veterans. The last sunbeam lightly falls from the finished Sabbath. On the pavement here and there beyond it is looking down a new-made double grave. Lo, the moon ascending, up from the east, the silvery round moon, beautiful over the housetops, ghastly phantom moon, immense and silent moon. I see a sad procession, and I hear the sound of coming full-keyed bugles. All the channels of the city streets they're flooding, as with voices and with tears. I hear the great drums pounding, and the small drums steady whirring, and every blow of the great convulsive drums strikes me through and through, for the Son is brought with the Father In the foremost ranks of the fierce assault they fell. 2 veterans, son and father, dropped together, and the double grave awaits them. Now nearer blow the bugles, and the drums strike more convulsive, and the daylight o'er the pavement quite has faded, and the strong dead march enwraps me. In the eastern sky, up buoying, the sorrowful vast phantom moves illumined. 'Tis some mother's large transparent face in heaven brighter growing. O strong dead march, you please me. O moon immense, with your silvery face you soothe me. O my soldiers twain, O my veterans passing to burial, what I have I also give you. The moon gives you light, and the bugles and the drums give you music, and my heart, O my soldiers, my veterans, my heart gives you love. Isn't that nice? Whew. It's one of those fellows. Walt Whitman is one of those great poets and great writers and great Americans who does deserve the word great, to say the great Walt Whitman. And that poem I've read before, Oh, Captain, My Captain, what a classic that is. That was after President Lincoln was killed, was assassinated. And at any rate, folks, I hope you like that poem. There is still nothing like poetry. And that brings me to my third favorite part of the show, MMM, the Magic Movie Moment. This is a wonderful movie, and I saw just a tiny bit of it, well, before Colonel Jeff came over and before we started our preparation for the show. It's a good movie. The Deer Hunter from 1978, directed by Michael Cimino, starring, oh, what a cast, Robert De Niro, Christopher Walken, Meryl Streep, George Zunza, John Casale, John Savage, and so many others. Good Lord. Truly a great cast. And this is about, well, that town in Pennsylvania, Clairton, Pennsylvania, where they all work in the steel mill, and their fathers all work there, and their sons will all work there. And they're all friends. And Michael, Nick, and Steve, that's De Niro, Walken, and Savage, have signed up, and they're going to Vietnam in the Army. And their friendship and the way they show preparation for actually going is very moving and very entertaining and very mystical. It really shows you, I felt in that town. I was part of that town. I was part of those friends. I was part of that affection. And they make a deer hunting trip, and then but it's a wonderful movie. But then when they get to Vietnam, the magic movie moment I saw today again, and I wanted to tell you about it, was the scene where they are captured and they are prisoners of the Viet Cong, and they're on a horrible-looking river that's barely moving, and they're in a hut, and they're being, with other prisoners, forced to play Russian roulette. And this scene, folks, which is not short, it's a long one, boy, those Viet Cong soldiers were just, oh, the joy and the laughter they got out of torturing these American soldiers. And the way it was acted all the way around was just terrific. And De Niro, playing Michael, is the leader of their group, of Nick and Steve. He is. We know it watching this movie. We know it from the beginning. Without him, they would have died right there. And he says, we've got to escape. We've got to get out. No, they don't want to. They're scared. They're this, they're that. They're angry. They're weak. But he pushes them and himself into making a plot to get these guys, instead of the Russian roulette and one bullet per revolver, he says, and they go through it, and he pushes them through it, and Stevie is put in the pit, in a worse place to be. And he tells Nicky what to do. And they're up at the table there. They're in the hut. And all these guys are gambling on them. And De Niro insists that they never mind one bullet. He'll do it with 3. That this is his plan. He'll do it with 3 bullets. And they're looking at him, and you could see him. One guy's whispering to the other. They fall for it. And they put, the main guy was a careful, he has a suspicious look on him, but he puts 3 bullets in that gun. And he spins it and he hands it back to De Niro. And De Niro knows what to do. And then the bad guy is slapping them and punching them, saying, "Mao, we Mao." And, which I think means shoot, and, oh boy, that language is like a knife going through you. And sure enough, De Niro, at just the right moment, and Christopher Walken playing Nicky knows what to do. De Niro puts that pistol to his head, and then at the last second there, he just turns it and just bam, it goes off like a cannon, and he kills the head bad guy. And then bang, bang, he uses the other 2 bullets to kill 2 more guys. And of course, Walken is up, like the warrior he is, and he's got a new lease on life. And he grabs these guys and he hits them, takes their rifle, shoots everyone too. And then he's beating the guy with a rifle. They did it. They killed them all. And Walken is beating the guy who's still, he's gone. He's already dead. But De Niro says, come on, Nick, now. They get out. And the movie, of course, continues. But when they rescue Stevie from where the bad guys put him, and then they all get on a giant tree limb and start to float down the river to God only knows what. But that scene shows you everything about these characters, about who they are. And, of course, about, their leader, Robert De Niro, who was tough as nails and just wouldn't give up. And, folks, it's a terrific movie. If you haven't seen it, The Deer Hunter. And please do see it. I've seen it many times. I've got to watch the whole thing now again and again and again. See it, and I think you'll feel the same way. Well, I mentioned that I was here on Milleronia for the World Series, and especially that last game, Game 7. What's better than Game 7 of a World Series? Come on. And both these teams, terrific teams. The Nationals from Washington, D.C., and the Astros from Houston. Very fine athletes and led by very good managers. And you know what, though? It made me so mad because for years now, at the end of a World Series, Game 7 of a World Series, they used to go into the show everything. Show in the losers' bench, on the bench there, in the dugout of the losers. They always had a camera just to show the faces. What's it like? What's the price to be paid to win a World Series? And then they went into their locker room, too. The winners and the losers. To talk in the locker room with the losers obviously is quiet. And obviously is sad. And they talk to the manager and maybe the captain of the team. And that's important to me, though. And they've never shown that in years. And what they do instead, they don't even go into the locker rooms anymore. They don't go in. Winners, losers, and no one. They stand out on the field there. So a couple of the news folks don't have to get their shoes dirty, I guess. Now, maybe that sounds a little tart, but I don't care. So now, what do I get to see? Well, I want to see it to the end of the 7th game. And the Nationals won, and now, what do we see? Well, what we see is, what we see? A 5'1" lovely blonde newscaster asking a stupid question and then holding the microphone 2 feet above her head so that one of the players can answer it. And, I know you know what I mean. That, you've won the game. How does it feel? How does it feel and then holding the microphone straight up so the guy can say what? Well, it feels good. They're good. They have a good team, and we have a good team, and it feels good. Can I go stay with my team now? Can I please leave and go in with my team to celebrate because we just won the World Series, but you can't see it because for some reason all of you don't want to bring a camera in there? I don't get it, folks, and I never will. That's something, if I ever had a dinner at a benefit or something with some giant network people, I would say, why do you do this? Well, first I'd say, hey, how about a show with me in it? But then I'd say, don't do that. Stop it. Show us what we want and show us what they want too. Instead of nothing, show something. Show everything. It reminded me also that, we just had daylight savings time. And I had to ask my wife and one of my kids, do we still even have that anymore? Wasn't there a law passed on some goofy bond issue that I don't know? But well, you hate daylight savings time. I like daylight savings time. Who cares? It's just wonderful. It's fun. It's fun. I've talked about this before, I know, but it's worth mentioning again. You know what? The light looks different in the morning just by, falling back an hour. I love that we have to think about that. Oh, that's right. You fall back an hour and then you spring ahead. In the spring, you spring ahead an hour. It's terrific. And I don't know what it is in us or some of us or a lot of us that says, no, I don't like it. Let's just never do it again. Okay. All right. I think you're wrong. I think you're missing something. I've said it before, but how wonderful it is that we all get together and do something like change the time. That's pretty neat, isn't it? When have people done that before in history? Hey, let's just change the time. Well, we all say, let's say what time is it? It's 6 o'clock. No, we all say it's 5 o'clock. I think that's cool. And you know what? Why the heck not? And it also brings me to talk about, as I mentioned, the orchestra leader tonight was Sergeant Henry Gunther. Because you see, this coming in just a few days, this coming Monday is November 11th. And November 11th, as I hope you know, is Veterans Day. And it started out as Armistice Day. Because it started out as the day when the armistice was signed to end World War I. It was called the Great War at that time. But it was a very, very deeply, the casualties in World War I. And, I think I still think of it as Armistice Day. Sure, it's great as Veterans Day. But on Armistice Day, coming up to that in 1918, well, you know what? They met in a railroad car that I bet you know about because Hitler did a little dance in it years later. And that railroad car had the big cheese from Britain and France and Germany, and they signed the armistice there. And the Germans wanted it to end immediately. As soon as they signed it, that was 5 a.m, 5 a.m. on November 11th. But the French and the British didn't like that. They wanted to get to all their troops, make sure everybody knew, and they chose what they knew consciously was a very poetic time. That is, the 11th minute of the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month in November 1918. And at exactly 11 a.m., everyone knew it. All the Americans, all the Brits, all the French, all the Germans, everyone knew that war was over at 11 a.m. And just before it, though, the British wanted to fight to get one thing back from the Germans that they had signed about too, but they didn't trust them just to give it over. And there was still a lot of gunfire and a lot of troop movement up to that hour. But, as it got close to it, of 11:15 on that day, on the 11th, in 1918, there was a man named Sergeant Henry Gunther. And he had come, he was in the 39th of the Army there, and is also known, by the way, as the Baltimore Regiment, because they were all from Baltimore. Not every single one of them, but it was almost all the fellows were from Baltimore, including Henry Gunther. And he had come as a sergeant just a few months before, in July of 1918. And they, boy, in those days, they put, everyone went right to the line, right to the top, right in battle. And he got caught doing something with some of his friends. Really nothing, it's not a crime, nothing, but I mean, he was demoted to private. And he was very, very sad by that. He was crushed by it. And as that last day came up, he wanted to get back what he thought his honor was. Not only for the regiment and for the division and all his mates, all his friends that he was fighting with, but back home for his parents and everyone in Baltimore. And folks, at about 10 to 11 on that morning, he stood up in that ditch with his bayonet on his rifle, and he alone charged a German machine gun nest that was firing through the smoke there and was just still trying to, kill Americans. And he got there, and it's 2 minutes before 11. He's running through, he's dodging around, and his soldiers, the other Americans, are yelling at him and screaming, "It's over, the war's over, don't do this, whatever you're doing, get back here now. It's at 11 o'clock, it's over." And the Germans did the same thing. The German soldiers were yelling at him in broken English and in German, "Go back, go back, go back, go back." And he kept running and he kept charging with that bayonet on that rifle. And less than a minute before 11, the Germans finally fired on him around a 5-second burst from the machine gun, and a couple went right in his left temple, and he was dead before he hit the ground. And you know what? Well, he was not only given a great award by the American command, but he was promoted back to sergeant, and he was the last soldier, not just American, the last soldier killed in the Great War, World War I. And that's enough to make it Armistice Day for me. I'm going to be at the National Veterans Cemetery on Monday on, Armistice Day and Veterans Day. And I'd like to ask you to do the same thing. It's very meaningful. And I go there on Memorial Day, on July 4th, and on Armistice Day, on Veterans Day. So you know what? Something to think about, folks. I'll bet you have a national cemetery right near where you are, too. It'll be something you'll always be glad you did. I know it, and you know it, because we all know the same things. Homer is Homer, and Pluto is a planet. So remember, folks, as always, if you walked out of bed today and had a job to go to and a home to come back to, and someone there who cares about you, folks, the game's over and you've won. Remember that. No matter who you're going to salute on Armistice Day. We'll see you next time.